three improvements on the school capital improvement. We've approved a capital improvement plan that calls for the building of middle schools in Grantham and Spring Creek. We both of us agree on that. We've authorized and completed the purchase of the land for those schools. The major objection is the cost. That's the major objection. Now, the school board has a plan that's over $50 million and payments of $5 million. I'm rounding off here. Our plan is $30 million with 2.7. So the difference is the cost. One architect that the school board hired has already stated it's $13 million. There are more schools to be built. If we spend all of our funds on these two schools, what we got left for the other schools? So surely we can all agree that we need to be prudent with our limited funds. That's why I'm recommending that what we do is to move away from what we've been discussing and talk about design build. That is the most logical way for us to continue to build schools and facilities in Wayne County. It's available to us, it's available to every county. This method has saved Wayne County taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars with the senior center and the Mount Olive Library. And we can save millions on these two schools. Here are some of the benefits. The county will establish the budget of construction. We just had, what was the lady's name that was here? I can't pronounce it. But she stated that the duty of this board is to establish the dollar amount for construction. So the county will establish a budget for the construction with the plans and the design handled by the school board. Let them decide. Here are the dollar amounts. You guys go and build a school with this amount of dollars. We already know that it can be done. It doesn't make any difference to me what design build team that they use. Let them decide that. This allows the school board complete control of those school designs. We are not dictating to the school board. With the county contracting to construct the schools, there will be an immediate savings of the sales tax. Guys, we got to remember that. If we build them, that's 6.75% reduction because we don't have to pay sales tax, but the school board does. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
So that's 6.75% of just on sales tax. Using a design build to construct those two schools with the same design, same design build team is estimated to produce savings of millions of dollars. The county gained an estimated $1 million savings on Mount Olive Library. Now, folks, do y'all realize that was 20%? 20% savings. If we do this on a design build for the schools, I'd fathom to say I couldn't imagine us getting 20%, but what if we save 10? If we can all agree on the method of construction, we could begin immediately in the selection of the design build team with the construction beginning in the next few months. This waiting will only increase these costs. The longer we wait, the more cost due to inflation and demand. Understand demand's going to be a factor here because as the economy improves, there's going to be more demand for building of schools. Since both boards agree on the three improvements, I would suggest that we at least authorize the school board to move forward on that portion of the capital improvement plan with an installment loan authorized and payments from the school board's sales tax reserves. We can always restructure that, pay it off at some point in the future if necessary, but at least they can begin immediately on those three improvements that we all agree on. And then I would ask that the chairman contact the chairman of the school board and request a joint work session to explore this design build concept for the construction of Grantham and Spring Creek in a hope that we can agree in principle on this strategy to deliver these schools to these communities. I'm sorry I had to read that, but I had to get all my thoughts in line. But folks, we've played around with this long enough. Prices are only going to go up. If we can borrow money at 4% under just a certificates of participation, and I wish you would confirm that figure of $2.7 million payment, we can do it with the most economical way of providing these new schools that are desperately needed in these two communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Yes, I've got a question on funding. How are they proposed, again, to fund? You've thrown out a lot there and gotten into weeds, but on the first three projects, how is the funding to take place? And what is the money that they have right now? What's it going to cost the county, and what are they paying? I know that they were getting so much per month, and that's what we talked about.
Y'all have copies of. They're proposing to use $6.1 million of a current lottery fund balance, and then sales tax of $6.1 million, which is in that amount is in the sales tax fund.
We're projected funding cash available.
Very bottom of the sheet.
Okay, what date is this?
What day?
Date.
This was December.
Sometime in December, yeah.
So those are funds on hand as of December of accumulated lottery and accumulated sales tax of
Now, this came from
12.3
the
million.
schools, not from me.
That's correct.
That's correct.
I mean, your concept, Mr. Daughtery, is, spot on. I'm just trying to find the money now, making sure that the money's there and what's it going to cost, and what exactly are they going to do.
Well, I think we're looking to them to advise us how to structure the debt. I just threw it out that we borrow the entire amount, but there are funds on hand, we can pay a portion down. But again, my understanding is that you are recommending that we hold as much onto the dollars to leverage that in borrowing in the future.
That was, when we presented back in October, that was one of the scenarios where we said, because the school board does have, in round numbers, between sales tax reserves, lottery reserves, let's call it approximately $20 million set aside.
So they've
pardon?
So they've got 20 million, and with that 20 million, they were looking to put 4 million aside in a reserve, and of course, we heard from Kara a couple of weeks ago that was not a very good thing to do on school boards, is that they spend the money, put it in the classroom. I think that's what she said. Maybe it's what I wanted to hear. Instead of putting it in a side slush fund, put it in the classroom with the kids. But, here again, your suggestion is spot on, but we can't make a decision today because we don't know the funding method and where the monies are going to come from to where they are, and to fund these top three priorities that the school's given us. I'd just like to see an update on the cash available and the money's going to be borrowed, and just where the money is. So we can springboard into the next two projects, Grantham and Spring Creek, immediately, because we have had discussion that those three are ready, but there shouldn't be any reason why we shouldn't go to the other two right away. And if we come up and hear that we don't have the funds to get those two done, and it was because we made or didn't make the right adjustments on the front end, then I don't want to have an excuse to not go into the other two projects because we didn't find what we had to do financially on the first three.
Yeah, and I think, let me just sort of try to recap. Under the estimates that you've referenced, these two new schools could cost, let's just say $30 million. And we've got three renovations, that is another 12. So we've got about $42 million of projects identified. The schools have approximately 20 million of accumulated reserves. They have indicated they might want to maintain a minimum balance of 4 million there. But however you look at that, there's likely going to be some requirement for debt, whether it's for the renovation projects or for the two new schools or some combination thereof. So you're in a very enviable position in that you do have some real reserves set aside that could certainly cover the cost of the three renovations if you went that route. And you could finance some portion of these two new schools if that's your decision. I would say, depending on timing, would it be possible to reimburse yourselves if they spent some of these reserves and reimburse themselves at a later date with a borrowing, so you could decide to move forward with those renovation projects? You have the cash to pay for those. You could position yourselves that when these two new schools are ready and you need to do a borrowing, you could always include in that borrowing some repayment of those reserves that you fronted for the renovation. So there are any number of combinations of that cash and potential debt for what I'll call these 5 projects, 3 renovations and 2 new schools. Our second presentation may be off base a little bit now, given the conversation, but
That's the reason I jumped ahead.
Well, we have a toolbox, and there are a lot of tools in a toolbox.
yes, sir.
And that's what we have to have as commissioners, is that what you're getting ready to get into in your presentation is just another tool.
That's right.
That's all it is.
And
Could I inquire one question on that before we move into that? We look to you to advise us. So we're looking for advice from you in regards to whether or not we need to structure that scenario of the 2 schools and the improvements, the $43 million worth of improvements. Do we need to structure that of paying, of advising the school board, you got the cash in the bank, go ahead and do these 3 improvements, use your dollars, and we'll borrow the money for the schools? Or do we tell them, no, we'll go borrow it all? If we tell them to go ahead and spend those dollars and we decide to borrow more than the 30, we could borrow more than the 30 to reimburse some of that. Could we not? I mean, we would have flexibility there, or not? I'm just trying to get to the end game here.
Yeah, it really does come down to how much of this do you want to finance on a long-term basis. What Ted was referring to is a federal tax law technique that lets you spend your cash now with the idea that when we incur the debt, we'll reimburse that cash later. So it really does come down to how much do you want to spend, how much do you want to borrow, and then you can spend some of your money on the short term, or the school board's money on the short term, with the idea that it's going to be reimbursed once the funds are borrowed, and then we'll put that money back into the reserve.
All right, well then let me narrow this down to a specific question. If I were to get this board to agree to go ahead and authorize the school board to go ahead and do these 3 improvements at $12.32 million, and to spend their reserves to do it, would that be recommended by you?
And let me just to clarify, if they were to spend that cash and 6 months from now, 4 months from now, they needed to do a borrowing for these 2 new schools, would they, if they adopted a resolution, could they pay themselves back for some or all of that cash?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can move forward with those 3 renovation projects. You have the cash to pay for them, and you would just reserve the right in the future to potentially borrow and reimburse those reserves. And the reason I would say that would be a good flexibility is, if you remember back to October, that you're going to have to issue debt if you're going to do all of this. You don't have enough cash to pay for it all. And by issuing the debt, you're going to have more of your budget that's got to go towards debt service than it currently does. You're going to have to dedicate some additional dollars for debt service. The impact of doing that, of dedicating more dollars to debt service, can be pushed out if you have a little bit of that cash or some of that cash set aside. So what I'm proposing there is you might want to debt fund some of these projects and hold on to some of those reserves, because what those reserves will afford you is the ability to pay for some of that new debt service without having to, say, raise taxes or find other revenues. So I would like to be able to show you all within this very confined example of these 3 renovation projects and these 2 new construction projects, what does it look like if we debt fund it all, and what does it look like if we spend cash and then do the rest as debt? Because it will show you 2 different outcomes that will come squarely back to this board because it has to do with your future budgets and what do you have to do to make debt service payments.
Could I follow up on that? A portion of this dollars that they currently have in reserves, Ms. Holt, are in fact lottery funds. How much of that is lottery funds?
Okay, the way they have it down here, I haven't looked up today's balance, but they had a balance of 6.1 million.
They've got $6.1 million in reserves from lottery funds.
Not now, remember, that's with the state, that's not with the county, with the state,
That's with the state.
yes,
But the point is, they can draw those dollars down,
yes.
and we all know that the state is always looking at fund balances, and I would undoubtedly think that we would want to encourage them to pull those dollars on down from the lottery to prevent them to be taken from by the state. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
So, it might be that we want to turn around and say, hey, take $6 million out of lottery funds and finance the rest. But we would look to you to kind of advise us. But we need to put a package together sooner rather than later. We've talked about this enough. I'm ready to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. King.
On preparing your synopsis of both scenarios, if you would include, and I guess you'd probably have to call the county Board of Education to get a sustainability on all of the part other than just construction, of what their expenses are, because when you're adding on to these, and even with the two new schools, not knowing what the expenses overall are going to be to operating expenses.
Operating expenses.
That's right, yes, sir. I
associated.
mean, I was just thinking of operating expenses, because we are looking at affordability and sustaining. If we got some unbalance with the lottery and unbalance with sales tax receipts, which we do in the county, we've got some, thankfully, it is stabilized, but this year looks just like it was last year. In fact, just a hair smaller or less than it was last year, projections. So, can you do that?
Yes, sir. I think what we're looking at is some combinations of funding these 5 projects, 3 renovation and 2 new schools. We've got a certain amount of cash we can spend, a certain amount that would have to be funded with debt. And we can show you what the annual debt service payments would be under those scenarios. And what we can try to do is to pull in the estimated operating costs associated with those schools, so you have the total picture.
Do you have a way to get with the state and look at the teachers' pay and what they're doing, the DPI, and what they're looking to do for the next year or two? So we can factor that in?
We certainly can try to get current estimates on that. When we were running these analyses back in the fall, we had some estimates.
Yeah, I remember.
On what staffing would cost, and to the extent those can be updated, we'll certainly work with the school board or the school staff to determine, what's the right source of information for that update.
Well, the source of information that I understand from hearing the lady Carol 2 weeks ago, it's easier to pronounce her last name, their first name.
I remember
Carol. But, she mentioned that the budget that the school board is going to put together this year should be ready in, 90 days, 100? So it's right around the corner. And it was, she said that we are supposed to get that directly, the budget, by statute. And so we'll be getting that here in the next May 15th.
Yes, it's in May.
There's a rule there that they have to have it to us, so that's just about 90 days we'll be able to get the budget to see what the operating costs will be.
It comes in, we're well into the budget process before that date actually comes down.
Can you utilize that?
I believe we can, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. Bell.
When we talk to the school board about this meeting, we need to inform them we're not talking about the decision that they're gonna make. We're just only trying to find out if we can finance what they're requesting. So we don't want it to get confused like it did before and think we're trying to take over.
No.
We just wanna know
Yeah.
if we are financially able to take care of the project at hand.
Mr. Chairman, I got real good direction 2 weeks ago by listening to the University of North Carolina Council of Government, or School of Government. And she opened my eyes a lot. And my whole thinking, Mr. Bell and the rest of the commissioners, is how are we going to finance it? That's all. Just where's the money going to come from, and how we're going to, instead of raising taxes and getting into a jam here in about 3 or 4 years because we made some decision. It's not based on emotions. I think everybody in this whole room wants schools and wants better education in Wayne County. I know we all do. But, you know, I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to pay and what it's going to cost, and has nothing to do with the Board of Education. We're just the money people and trying to get the money out there and utilize their funds that have been given to them by federal and state funding arms, and to make it all work. Thank you.
Well, I can only speak for myself, but after hearing this presentation, after reviewing all the facts, of looking at alternative ways of providing a new school for these two communities, you know, I can only speak for myself that I just think that the whole lease purchase program is dead in the water in my book. I will not support a $4.7 million annualized payment for these two schools. They cost too much. We can't afford that. We have other needs in this county, and we need to find the most efficient way of providing. I think I had a statement in here. Hold on just a minute. Let me get the right wording of this so that I'm quoted correctly. Well, I can't find it. It's got too much words there. But my point is that we need to build the most affordable schools for our county that provides an education that basically we can afford. We don't want to turn around and dictate to the school board what the design is, but again, Carol told us that the statute says that we establish the dollar amount. Here's the dollar amount to build the schools, you design it. We know that, again, I state, we know that they can be built for $30 million. So who in their right mind would agree to $57 million? Because we need 2 more schools. We need other issues here. So as far as I'm concerned, I think a great idea. I'd love to have it, but we just can't afford it. And I just think we need to let the school board know that we need to find another way of addressing these 2 schools.
And now,
Don't forget you got we had an estimate of a $3.9 million sewer line going to Grantham. You have to still address that.
We had a what?
3.9 million sewer line in Grantham, that's what we have in the CIP.
That is correct. But now, basically, what we were talking about doing there was building 2 schools on a common campus. And in talking with the architect, since you're only building 1 school, you can use the other side of the campus for a sewer system, so you would not have to spend $4 million for a sewer line going out there. So I'm assuming we're not going to be doing that. We cannot afford to do that and also build these schools. We just need to be realistic. We need to lower our expectations, folks. We cannot be building schools like they can be built in Raleigh. Raleigh's got a bigger tax base than we do. So we've got to be realistic.
yes, sir, and I think just one of the things that will be key to our developing these cash flows is to get some sort of direction on what's the cost of these projects that we need to work with. The 3 renovation projects here from the schools are estimated at $12.3 million. So ideally what we would get is some direction that, you know, either use that assumption or a different number. And then the question on the 2 new schools, because we've worked thus far between something that costs $30 million estimate and something that's upwards of $50 or $60 million. So for us, I think to provide you all with a meaningful set of analyses, what's the right cost to assume for these 5 projects at this stage in the game?
Chairman. I talked to a couple of school board members, and of course you could verify this, but the central attendance in the Spring Creek Elementary and the Charles B. Aycock, those 3 projects, these 2 school board members are telling me that these 3 numbers are realistic. That 12.3 and change is realistic numbers as far as they're concerned. I don't have that in writing. I'm just saying you might want to verify that. But those 3 projects, of course, one of Charles B. Aycock's in my district. We're in a crisis situation at Charles B. Aycock with overcrowdedness, and this board knows Mr. Aycock and myself graduated from there in 1965, and it's the same today as it was back then, except for an additional gym. The cafeteria is the same, 470 over capacity. So, somehow or other, I'd like for us to look at these 3 what were a top priority at one time, to see if we can break these loose and get them started, as far as funding.
Mr. Chairman. Again, I agree wholeheartedly with the need, but you can see where it's renovation projects, and I appreciate your concern, but project funding, cash available is the same as what the cost of the upgrades are, $12,320,000, indicated by sales tax receipts and lottery funds. The cost here is real, $12,320,000, but the funding, the availability here, the funding method is using lottery funds that are speculative and sales tax. You don't know what they are unless you increase the sales tax, or you increase retail sales that increases the revenues from sales tax. So here again, I would feel slighted if I didn't have another tool in my toolbox, and bonds are a tool. And I think that we saw that as a tool in Wake County and certainly in Johnston County, and just recently in the city of Goldsboro. There's a need, and these are tools. If you need a sledgehammer, if you need a flat head screwdriver, or you need a Phillips, I mean, this is a tool. And I'd like to know more about the bonds, because they are using them all over the state, and if it's permissible, Mr. Chairman, if Carlisle and company is here, or if we would take some time and at least educate the people out there that they're listening and about bonds, because there's a lot of people that are questioning them, and there's some that have gone on record that it won't pass, or they don't need it, or it's going to increase taxes. Let's find out what it is.
Mr. Chairman. And I want to hear that too. But my clarification, Ms. Holt, is it the 12 million or is it 20 million that they've got sitting there that they could actually use?
Well, I mean.
Are they looking to use the 12 million out of the 20 million that's
They're
sitting
going
there?
to use the 12 million out of 20.
Okay.
They're talking about using lottery funds, like I said, with the state. I don't think my microphone is working, so I'm trying to speak up. And the sales tax is not future sales tax receipts. It is current sales tax they have on the county books at this time.
So this is what they've got sitting there.
Yes.
Okay, this is not speculative.
The bottom
I just
part
wanted
of
to be
this
clear about
sheet,
But long-term
Yeah.
financing for the other 2 schools.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
So I guess my point is, I'm sort of like, Commissioner Mayo, if we make sure we got this updated, then, I don't know if it's 2 weeks from now, we can go ahead and move on that, but we gotta into some agreement over the cost of the other two projects,
But
the bigger projects.
for
So we
this
could
board
all
to
of-
consider
excuse
a
me, Mr. Chairman.
reimbursement resolution.
So we all agree that basically,
you
we
would
are ready
take
to
action
move
on
on
them
on
and
these three
simply
improvements. We
preserve
need
the
to let them
ability at a
go.
later
It's just a
date
matter of whether or
to
not we want to go ahead and say,
reimburse
spend
any
your
monies you
cash.
spent on
We'll
those
later come
projects.
back
Doesn't
possibly and
require
borrow
that you do it, but
go
it
ahead and get these
preserves the
projects
option.
going, because the price is only going to go up, guys, and they desperately need them.
So those are the three
You know, I'm not-
renovations, and then I guess circle back to the question
But in 2 weeks, let's.
about some guidance on the cost assumptions to use for the two new schools. That, I think, will be critical to us putting our numbers together. And we certainly can run it at different amounts to see sort of how the numbers change at a total cost of 30 versus 40 or whatever. But that's where I think we need some guidance in order to provide y'all with some meaningful information, the cost assumptions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
One other question, though. If we were to go with the three renovation projects, go now and let the Board of Education use the monies they have in their fund balance, if we decide for the two new schools is to go with an education bond, going ahead and releasing these first three renovation projects, would that have an effect on the education bond as far as being on the ballot? What effects do you see?
Well, if you were to move forward with these three projects and have cash available to start or even complete them, I don't think that would preclude you from including funding for them as part of a bond. You could include them, and if that passes, you could reimburse yourselves from that.
My thought is the actual passing of an education bond. It's sort of like, human beings are human beings,
Right.
Once you get something for your area,
Right.
Right,
and
you're not too concerned about, possibly what's happening
Right.
over here.
Understood. So if these three projects aren't part of the referendum,
Yeah.
what happens to us? Well, and I think y'all certainly would know better than I and how that could impact the passage of the referendum. But I think it's clearly a consideration.
Well, if I could, you just hit on something, Mr. Mayo, about an educational bond. If I think back at the capital improvement plan for the county and just looking at education, you've got some adjustments I'm hearing from other board members on inner city schools. I've got some other areas that I'm hearing from the community college level, from Wayne Community College needing, I think we've got a capital improvement plan that shows that, Mr. Chairman, that we need $9 million next year, I think, for Wayne Community College. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's correct. So, we're looking at a lot of expense just in education. And I understand bonds, whether it's a 7-year period or if there's extensions, whether it's a year or 3 years, and even as explained by Carol last meeting, you don't even have to use them. It's up to the discretion of the commission to use the monies as needed. So, it's interesting that, we're looking at just this, and I'm not, and Mr. Bell, I'm not trying to tell the school board what to do about their 07-12 plan. We've already crossed that bridge a year ago. So it's just looking at the education in Wayne County and how much do we want to expense to further education in all areas, in all school grades, including the community college, which we do own, which is ours.
I know you're not going to like to hear this.
It's just-
I went by and spoke to Rosemary at the Board of Elections about a bond, the possibility of a bond on the May ballot.
Oh, yeah, it's too late.
And, I just want to make sure that.
No, we put that protocol, we did that 2 weeks ago and 4 weeks ago, but it's
Well,
all that was,
It just.
that's why they gave us
she
the
was-
information.
I think she was saying that we had to get everything ready for the wording of it to be on the bond by the 28th of this month.
That's right.
I mean, I can't imagine it would be that far in advance, but that's what she's recommending and stating, that she'd need to have the wording of the bond for by the end of the month.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. King.
we already knew that. Because we already put that out, 4 weeks ago. And the protocol and all that was given free to our council about the protocol that was needed for bond. Again, it's just a tool.
Understand.
And the people of the county deserve to know every tool in their toolbox. And that's what I was suggesting a month ago, or just to make sure that you understand that I'm not pushing a bond, I'm just saying it's something that can be used. And if it can't be used in May, then it's possible it could be used in November, if in fact you can put something on the ballot in November. So it's something that we need, I think, to look at as a commission, and we get all the information to make the right choice. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Bailey?
Just in case if we decide to float a bond, the wording of it is the easy part, putting that on the ballot. What you gotta do, you gotta go out there and educate the community. You gotta form a committee with people all across the county, with schools, county commissioners, school board, county commissioners, and everybody to go out and educate the people about the bond for them to pass. Just putting it on the ballot, you're not gonna get it to pass.
Anybody else?
Is there somebody here to make presentation on that today? Were we supposed to hear something on that today at all?
Capital funding.
Not on a bond referendum per se, although we're certainly, between myself and Tom, happy to discuss questions about a referendum, but we did not have a potential presentation on a GO bond referendum, no, sir.
Well, could I, Mr. Chairman, if I could clarify the question, so we need, I think what you're asking is a consensus of this board of the dollar amount for these two schools, so that you can put together a plan of options of financing. Am I correct?
That's correct, and indulge me for a moment in this second book.
Okay.
If you all turn, and again, I don't think that going through every page of this is warranted given our prior conversations with you, but I do think if you look at page 19, it may help us and you all understand where we go from here. You'll remember page 19 from our presentation back in October. This is the capital improvement plan that is countywide. Schools, community college, libraries, you name it. You can see all the different projects out roughly 10 years, and it's about $240 million worth of projects. These two middle schools and the 3 renovation projects show up under fiscal year 2014/15. If you go down, you see that gray box, $1.8 million. 3.85 and 6.6 million. Those are the 3 renovation projects. And then right below that in a blue box is 54.8 million. That is the 2 new middle schools using the cost assumptions from the architect. So that's why I say I think these analyses are going to be a little different from what you technically want to see. But the point is, what we need is some guidance on what should be in that blue box, where the 54 million. We've heard 30 million, we've seen numbers upwards of 50 to 60 million. And that's not to say we can't run a few different cases, but I think that seems to be where some of the immediate guidance needs to be. And then our option is to just encapsulate these 5 projects. We can look at just these 5 projects, 3 renovation projects and 2 new schools by themselves, look at cash funding versus debt funding. That's easy enough to do. The follow-on question to that is, do you want to see what that looks like within the context of the bigger county-wide CIP, which is a pretty substantial document or a pretty substantial dollar amount over the next 8 to 10 years. So we can, with some guidance, look at just these 5 projects, and then we can lay it in on top of your overall CIP Either way, though, I think we just need some guidance on those project cost assumptions for the 2 new schools. Don't necessarily need that today. If you're able to give it to us, great.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily need it today, but we will need it, I think, so that we can bring something back to you that is maybe within line of your expectations or your opinions of what those schools would cost.
And Mr. Chairman? Mr. King? Also operating cost.
Yes, sir.
You know, that's.
Yes, sir. This, we do work in here, some operating costs, but we would revisit those, particularly as it relates to school staffing.
In looking at that, on the 3 improvements that are there, the source of funding would be to pay cash, pay as you go.
That's correct.
That is what's in this
That's what's in our
case.
plan.
That's correct.
It is easy enough for us to show you what it would look like if you paid for those with debt and kept your cash, or reimbursed yourselves through a borrowing.
Well, what I'm saying is the capital improvement plan basically itemized that those 3 projects were going to be pay as you go, pay from reserves. And with that in mind, and we have an addendum here that gives us the option to later reimburse ourselves.
Yes, sir.
You know, I'm prepared today to go ahead and authorize the school board to start these 3 projects. I mean, we can wait 2 weeks, we can wait 2 years, but the bottom line is they need to be done. They have the monies. We've already got it in the capital improvement plan to pay as you go. Let's just put an addendum to that of stating that we would be able to reimburse ourselves, if need be, from loan proceeds if we decided to go that route. So if it's already here, we've already approved the capital improvement plan. You know, I'm ready today to send a clear message to the school board. We're ready to take some action, that we're ready to go ahead and authorize you to do these 3 improvements. Hire your architect, get it done. So, Mr. Chairman, I am going to make a motion that we authorize the school board to go ahead and spend their reserves, from their reserves, the $12.32 million to do these 3 improvements.
Okay, gentlemen, I have a motion on the floor. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Pate.
and it's not that I don't disagree with the direction we're headed on this, but I really want to see the updated figures before I vote for it. And that's the way I feel.
If they can do it for 12.3 million, I say have at it.
Anyone else?
And I probably need to check this lottery.
Yeah,
I have to check those lottery numbers.
Mr. Bell.
I know it's easy to say for them to go ahead, but there's certain steps they gotta go through before you can just
I agree.
go out there.
But they're waiting on direction from us.
Yeah. One thing let me point out on reimbursement, there's a resolution, a formal resolution we would have you adopt and so forth. We can get that to you. Normally, what you're doing with reimbursement is that you're spending your money, in your case, the county's money, with the idea that later there's going to be a financing and we're going to reimburse the county's coffers for that expenditure of cash that we made. And so we're going to do a long-term financing of our cash. Here, if you're talking about this is some money the county was going to spend, then you would want to proceed with that. If we're talking about spending the school board's money, the lottery money and so forth, unless you want to take that on as a debt of the county, you probably would not want to do the reimbursement on that, because there you would have the school board spending it. You borrow the money later to reimburse their coffer. And I'm not sure you'd want to do that, or at least without some arrangement in place with the school board now.
Thank you for the clarification, then I would not want to do that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. King.
Again, Mr. Daugherty, it's nothing against the school, and we're certainly all up here wanting better education. But these gentlemen here today we're spending a lot of money, even if it's their money, we're still okaying it. And I'm like Mr. Pate, this is a presentation, and there's nothing in the county that says they're even perceived that we are trying to derail something. And I'm just as excited as you are, and I know all the other commissioners are, but again, like Mr. Payton, like he just brought up, they just can't come out here and pull a trigger today on something that we can wait 2 weeks and get a full picture.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I agree that we might want to wait till the next meeting because, as already been mentioned, these three renovation projects, these are not set numbers. These are actually old figures that have been put out, and I would like to see the Board of Education. As a matter of fact, I've already heard that these figures would like to be more substantiated and justified, and I agree that we should go to the Board of Education, somebody, Mr. Chairman, somebody should go to the Board of Education and ask them by next Commissioners meeting, February 18th, that they verify as close as possible these three numbers for these three renovations. Because I wouldn't want to get into these things and all of a sudden they say, oh my gosh, it's going to cost us 20 million rather than 12. So I'm in favor of waiting till the next meeting in 2 weeks.
Mr. Parker.
Mr. Chairman, I was, when the meeting is finally coming close to an end today, I was going to recommend that you recess until Monday. So if you could get that information between now and Monday, you would be able to, if the information that's being requested.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I just have a question.
Mr. Bailey.
Don't you think, or you all think, that it would be beneficial if we have a little small meeting with the school board so they can be at the table whenever the decisions are made? And, I think they'll feel more comfortable than we just tell them that, look, here's what we want you to fund, or bill, or start, or whatever.
And to add on to that, if I may, Mr. Daugherty, add on to that, prepare a letter and ask them to upgrade those figures that we talked about and be ready to
Meet with us
and discuss all the dollar figures that we've seen on paper, because on a document that I'm looking at, say revised 42507, it's got a dollar figures on here for schools, and I know that you have a document in front of you saying that what a school can be built for, and I just think we need to get some real figures, and we don't need to be, we just gotta, let's not be secretive, let's not be concerned with, let's lay it on the table and just say, these are the dollar figures that we've seen over time, and which one of these dollar figures that we can agree the school can be built for. Somewhere between, Mr. Daugherty, what you have and that larger figure up there where we know that we don't believe we can go to.
Mayor.
We're only talking about the three renovation projects, so it's not imperative for us, am I correct, to have on the two new schools, it's not imperative for us to have updated figures by next Monday. If we're going to release these first three projects here, these are the three projects that we need some closer figures on, so we can go ahead and give them the okay to go with it. Am I correct in that?
I agree with you, Mr. Mayo, but if we go, how long is it gonna take them to get some figures together for the other two? They got figures already, that's just not, we will prolong it.
Okay, updated figures through an engineering firm takes a while. Okay?
I think they got something laid over there already.
No, go ahead.
And perhaps we've got the minutes, I'm sure we got the minutes somewhere, but that meeting we had out at Langtree, they were ready to go with these projects.
That's correct.
They were, so I don't think that we need to rediscuss all that, we just need the updated figures.
That's all we need.
That's what we need.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chair,
Mr. Daugherty.
I think it's a good compromise, but let me say this, guys. Seriously, we can bat around this thing from now to doomsday, or we can take some action. And it's time, guys, that we start taking some action. With that in mind, I withdraw my motion and ask that the chairman request updated figures to be presented to us no later than Monday when we reconvene our meeting. And at that time, I'm going to be prepared to make another motion that we move forward with this with updated figures. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Mr. Parker, can you handle getting up with the school board or their attorney or Marshall or?
Yes, we'll do that, get that done.
Now, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Doyle.
so that we can give direction here. I'm at 30 million. Do I hear anything above 30 million? We need to give some direction.
Sound like an auction.
I know. We need to give some direction. I feel very comfortable with a design bill, with these conditions now, with a design bill that we can build these two schools using a design build team and construct them for $30 million. When I have estimates in front of me of $12.6 million for a school, I am even higher using a design build program at $30 million. But if y'all don't feel comfortable with that, give this gentleman a figure so that he can give us a presentation on how to structure the deal.
They call you.
There's the school board.
That's the president's phone.
I hear you.
Then I go ahead and,
30.
I'll go ahead and, it doesn't take a motion, I'm sure. It's just maybe a suggestion. He's looking for some directions. How do you want to handle that, Mr. Chairman?
I need input from all of you on what kind of figure you're looking at.
Well, I think 30 million is a good start, but we also, as we probably should do with Charles B. Aycock, is make sure you're adding 6.6 million, you're adding a lot of classrooms. There's an operational cost there. I mean, it's just nice to see an operational cost. It's easy to build something, but to sustain it. And the 30 million is a great figure to start with, but we need a cost of what it's going to be. So that's who does it right there. We just need some kind of operating cost that fills into 30 million.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Camardi.
since we're putting out figures, I'm reading from a document that says Wayne County Public Schools 5-year facility plan. This revised 42507, and the figure for New Grantham, $17,689,000. So that'd be about $35 million for the two schools if you add those two together. Both of them dollar figures about the same, and I'm reading off a document that I think comes from the school system.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Bell.
I recommend a rounded off figure of 40 million for the two schools.
Does that include operating costs?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mr. Payton.
Well, if we did that, you could bring the numbers back and then we could work lower, start from the top and
That's a
work
good
down.
And
That would be a worst case scenario, I
that
guess.
certainly-
40 million.
works. And now, just as a point of clarification, 40 million for construction costs, sort of, what it costs to get into the school, right? Equipping the school, technology, those things. We'll just assume the $40 million figure, and that's what we'll show as financing. The operating costs are going to be a separate cash flow. We're going to show you this is how much it's going to cost you every year to staff it,
Oh, yeah.
utilities, things of that nature. Is that?
It's got to fall under that 40 million, though, because it got 30 million for the two schools. We've already established that. Now that we're establishing operating costs, not putting IT in or furniture. What is it going to cost? And I was thinking the teachers and DPI could give you some direction on what it would cost per, because you have to have a certain number of teachers and kids and room size.
But I think you wouldn't finance those costs. You'd have the
No,
capital
But we
costs.
need to know what.
I agree. But I think what I'm hearing is the cost of the facilities
30.
used.
30. I don't know where in the world we're coming up with an extra $10 million. Guys, if you can build it for 12.6, why do you want to turn around and say, well, build it for 20? I mean, $30 million is substantial enough to build these two schools. We've already got the estimate. Traditional schools. I mean, if they're good enough for the children in Johnston County, they ought to be good enough for the children in Wayne County. these are great schools. I mean, I was really impressed with the schools. Well, I'll give you credit for that. But my point is, I don't understand why we're jumping to $40 million, of $10 million more, when we can build them for less than 30.
Well, but I thought John's comment was the brick and mortar plus, and I misunderstand, saying they're sustaining them each.
No, I'm just going back
The
to,
operation, but you see, you can't finance operation. I'm just talking about the cost
You're talking
of
about
building the
brick and
school.
mortar.
Just the school.
Just the school.
Okay,
I'm back to the 30 then, because I was
Okay.
thinking we're talking operational as well. too.
No, you can't finance that.
Yeah, I got that, man.
okay, I'm polling everyone now. I've got two figures. Mr. Pate, your figure?
Now I realize we're not gonna be able to finance that way, then I'm back to taking operation out, I'm back to the 30 million figure. And, you know, if it's a little more or a little less, we'll be able to, we can still gauge approximately what the cost you're gonna leave to us.
Mr. Camardi?
I was operating off of the dollar figure that I was reading off of here in deference to what the school system had written, revised in '07. But since we're talking about a dollar figure that we can use to get started with the understanding that it could have to be negotiated higher, then I agree, let's get a dollar figure that the gentleman can use, that we can work from. And then we have to adjust.
I need a figure from you now, though.
17 each. That's what this sheet referred to from '07. It's 7, and they had to figure it up from something, Mr. Daugherty. I'll go with that figure that they asked for
Mr. Chairman,
in
could I
'07.
just comment on this? I would agree with you under conventional construction. We're talking about design build where we're saving a great deal of money under that concept at 30. Now, we're not talking about building 2 schools under their normal way, because you can't do that.
All right, sure, then you're
So,
factoring in the
I'm
savings.
factoring in the savings of a design build at 30 million.
Then I yield to Mr. Daugherty's figure based upon the fact that the school system will get nothing less. It's just that we'll do it on the
That's
design
correct.
build,
We just save
and
the
we'll
money.
save more, okay.
Mr. Mayor?
What figure are you at?
I'm at 30.
Mr. King? 30.
I'm still at 40 because you don't know what design build is gonna cost. So I'd rather have it a little bit inflated for budgetary purposes than to set 30 million, then got to come back and ask for another 10 million later.
Well,
We have to do it.
You don't have to spend the 40 million because you said 40.
Okay, well, they've outnumbered you, Mr. Bill.
It's okay.
I think the figure that we need to work with according to the, and we're not.
So I ask you for a motion.
I'm on the record.
Now, I'm pulling motion now.
Well, that's entirely up to y'all. I mean, I was just polling
I
to
just
see
think
what
it's
kind
time
of
that we
figure.
get some plan together. I think we do need to reach out to the school board. We do need to have a meeting. We need to explain the advantages of design build, and that we're willing to find a way to finance a 30 million under design build project where we have the tax savings, we got all of those savings in place so we can move forward.
Because we are not necessarily telling the school board today or any day, $30 million is it. We're giving this Davenport company
That's
the
correct.
$30 million figure for them to work with. And,
As a
and
starting point,
like
yes,
someone said, it could be above 30 million, way above 30 million. But that's just a figure for you to start with, to work with,
Understand.
and bring back to us.
Yep.
Is everyone in agreement on that?
Yes, sir.
If Mr. Daugherty will word his motion to read that the $30 million is in place, but to ensure that the school system get no less of a building than what they figured on in '07.
Personally, I don't think we need.
I didn't make a motion.
I don't think we need to
You just-
make a motion.
just give an
Just
information,
come
come
figure.
back with finance.
That's just for the financing option.
He did make a motion. He made a motion for the chairman to request from the Board of Education updated figures by Monday when the Board of Commissioners reconvenes.
Oh, I did.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, Ms. Marshall just read it. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor, show your sign of right hand.
It's bad when you got a motion on the floor and you forgot it.
Today, I mean, it's 4 o'clock.
Any other questions for Davenport and Company?
It's like herding cats, isn't it?
Making progress, thank you.
Thank you for y'all's presentation
Thank
today,
you.
and we apologize for starting so late.
It was a good conversation. Thank you.
Got fried chicken.
Believe me, you moved us further down the road. You did,
Well,
and we appreciate that.
Good, that's
And the
progress.
children of Wayne County appreciate that.
Okay, we got a couple of more small items to take care of right quick, and then I'm gonna hit y'all with another bombshell. With my notes.
Could you get me those numbers? Financing
Okay,
30
we-
million at 4%.
We tabled at the last meeting, and we discussed it a little bit a while ago, and we went from red lights to chairs, but it was tabled from the last meeting. What's the pleasure of the board on the light to go on the back wall or switch wall, letting us know when we're live and not live on camera?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion on the floor to approve. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor,
I'd rather have the chairs if we have a choice.
I think we're working on both. sir.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay.
Could I discuss?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Can I ask, we was talking about putting a light back here in the back that'll say on air, and it'll cost $1,500. Is that correct?
What I've been told. And don't ask me why it's gonna cost that much, because I.
Well, that's a lot of money for a light, and I just don't see the absolute need of that, because, I mean, I am what I am, and I say what I say, and I really don't need to have a light back here tell me I'm on the air. So, I'm gonna oppose this motion.
Mr. Pate.
Maybe we need to table it again, because I think that's a lot of money too, and I think there could be a simpler solution to that. I don't know what kind of light they're talking about. That's a pretty expensive light. You could have a light bulb that's on the wall there, just turn it on, walk out, turn it on, so you guys are on there.
That's the pleasure of the board. If Mr. Bell wants to withdraw his, or we'll finish conversation, Mr. Camardi, I saw
said
you.
it, I'm sticking to it. No, I just, if you want to table it, that's fine.
I like to just find out a cheaper way to go.
Just a minute, Mr. Camardi.
I was hoping that we would table it and let the IT department see what it would take to connect a relationship between that thing being turned off when Marcia turns off her stuff over there. I mean, she's the one that's got us in time. If there was a relationship between you closing it down and then that back there cuts off at the same time.
I think we still have to count down. I think we
Ma'am?
still need to count down.
I know, but when you count down and we're off, if there was some technological way for you going off and that cutting everything off, I mean.
No, we
there's
don't want
way-
to do that.
Well, and for y'all's information, that figure did come from the IT department. Mr. Mayor.
Is this a wireless, or evidently it's not? It must be hardwired.
It's not, it can't be wireless.
You know, like a TV studio has a light that says on air.
Yeah.
That's what it would be.
But I'm wondering if it's wireless, or does it
I
have?
don't think so. That's what I understood.
Okay. I know who IT got their bid from. Ask them to go back to it. I'm not gonna call their
And
name.
well, then we need for Mr. Bell to withdraw his motion,
Okay, I
and we need to
withdraw my
table it
motion.
for the next meeting then, and not the Monday meeting, the next regular meeting.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay, Mr. Bell has withdrawn his motion. Do we need a motion to table it until the next?
He's
Okay, we
withdrawn
just- Okay, he's withdrawing his, okay, we'll talk about it at the next meeting. All right, Mr. Mayo, I think you've got something else on the eastern region.
Yeah, and I may have lost all my notes here.
We were talking about
Boy,
schools.
I got so much stuff here. Let's see, here it is. I wanted to clarify on the Eastern Region money for the commissioners. It was brought up earlier today that if we were to ask for $500,000 of this money rather than the whole $576,923, that the county would not have to go to the LGC for approval for this money. My recommendation to the board is that, and I want to put this in the form of a motion, that we go for the full amount from the Eastern Region of $576,923.08, and to ask our finance director, Ms. Holt, to initiate the paperwork that we need to the LGC as soon as possible, so we can collect or can get the whole full amount rather than $500,000. To go, Sylvia Nesbitt of the Eastern Region volunteered to send out an email to all the other 12 counties. And she stated in that email that Wayne County was interested in the possibility of borrowing their $576,923. As of today, she has not got any replies, but it could be because those commission boards have to meet in these counties in order to do that. So, and on the other hand, if we do get some inquiries, we do have, the Eastern Region does have a fudge factor as far as that part of the March 1st deadline. Now, we need to get our application in for our part. We need to meet the March 1st deadline. But if we're looking at some of the other counties, there is a little fudge factor in there that they will allow us to get the transactions done before, after March 1st.
Okay. Mr. Parker, have you got an update on another county, or?
Well, Greene County had indicated that they would be willing to borrow the money and charge you 2%. Basically, they've been told by the LGC that they're probably not entitled to borrow the money, but they may be looking for something for themselves, so that Greene County would be off the table. So it would have to be somebody else in the Eastern Region if you were going to other counties. Any county that's going to be borrowing more than $500,000 for more than 60 months or more would have to get permission from the LGC. And all of these municipalities, and I spoke with Ms. Acock, who said she was meeting with the LGC tomorrow, that they would need to go ahead and request that. The board, each board is going, local board will have to ask for the thing. A problem time-wise is that the LGC meets on the first Tuesday of every month. They like to have the applications in 4 weeks before they meet. Obviously, we can't get it in that quick for the March 4th meeting of the LGC. But I think that they would be willing to work with the county, and I think that the Eastern Region, based on what Commissioner Mayo has been told, is willing to work as well. You can just say to the LGC that you want to borrow the money for economic development purposes, and it goes to the Eastern Region. You've got to be specific about exactly what it is, like it's going to be Pikeville to do whatever you would approve if you're going to approve Pikeville, whatever you're going to approve for Mount Olive, whatever you would approve for Goldsboro, and whatever you would approve for Fremont. And then their ability to borrow is going to have to be approved by the LGC too.
Could I inquire there? Yes, sir. But if a county borrowed $499,000, it would not have to go to LCC.
So long as you didn't borrow it for more than 60 months, and you're not going to be able to get it but for 60 months, so you could borrow it for 59 and a half months.
Right. So if, say, Carteret County would allow us to borrow from them, they could get $499 and not go with all the paperwork necessary, and we could borrow it from them. They could borrow the money, and then we would borrow it from them.
Right.
Right, but in any case, whether we get the 576 or the 499, if we loan it to a municipality, they still have to go to the LGC to get approval.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they were gonna have to go.
They're gonna have to, in it, just like we are.
So we're gonna have to.
We're gonna go because we're asking for the 576, if the board approves it. But even if we go with the 499, we don't have to go to the LGC, but the municipalities we're gonna loan it to, if they are municipalities, would have to go to the LGC, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Now, what I was speaking of is like if we were going to borrow money from Carteret County,
Yeah.
if it's 499 and 59 and a half months, then they would have to go.
That's correct.
They would not have to go.
Okay.
That's correct.
Question, Mr. King. When we start borrowing these monies, if in fact we did, how does that reflect on our rating when we have to, as we talked with Davenport, to establish a AAA or AA rating? And how does LGC look upon us as borrowing these or flushing these accounts through our system? In fact, if one of these accounts would go belly up, bankrupt, not be able to pay, we'd have to pick up the liability. It's always a chance, but how does it reflect on Wayne County as far as the LGC and others looking at us too, as we, right now, we're not in debt much. We've got a radio system and we've got a school system, 15 million and about 10 million, so we're really not in debt. But how does this look on our books?
Well, one, it's clearly your debt. So if you borrow money and loan it to somebody else and they don't pay it, you've got to pay it back, period. It's your debt to the state, and it'll be a debt to the state of North Carolina because the eastern region is closing down June 30th. I wish that question you had asked me about the rating would have been asked to the Davenport people, who could have answered that much better than I. If everybody is paying all right, I don't see why it would make any difference, but it clearly show as a debt of yours.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up if I may, and thank you, Mr. Parker. And my concern is that flushing this money through the system is one thing, and helping these others are another. But looking after the bottom line of Wayne County is what we're responsible for. It's nice to help other people when we can do this, but if it makes our books look heavy in the eyes of someone outside our county, especially LGC, might be something we need to think about. Mr. Doherty.
Could I follow up with that one, Ms. Hope? Would that not be if you've had an obligation and also you would have, on the other hand, the receivable, would they not balance one another out?
They will balance, but if you pay the debt,
Pam.
they will balance out. It depends, but you remember, we are paying an administrative, 1% administrative fee up on the front with no interest. Then we would be, depending on what y'all decide on, you're going to charge interest to these municipalities. But the debt payment will actually be Wayne County's.
Correct.
It'll be up to us to collect it from the municipalities.
That's correct.
It will be our debt.
So it could have an effect in regards to how our rating.
And then you've got to decide what are your collection methods and what are you going to do with, it's on the debt is ours.
Well, after hearing how broke they are, I'm not so sure. No, I'm so sure. I better hush. It's been a long day, hasn't it?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Parker, question. If whether the LGC really doesn't have to approve Wayne County's amount of $576,000 before we apply for it, we can apply for it, and Eastern Region can pay us based on the LGC's approval. Is that correct?
Yes, but you can't get it until LGC approves it.
Well, what I'm saying is that we still need to try to keep the timeline, if possible, March 1st of getting in the application, if possible.
Absolutely.
okay? And just let the Eastern Region, they already got it, we just don't get our check or whatever until the LGC approves it.
First, the Eastern Region has to approve it, and
That's
then the LGC would have to approve it if you're going for more than the
That
500,000.
is, yes, sir. So that's what I would recommend doing, is let's keep the timeline of February 18th and get this application in, and then we can start maybe looking at the possibilities of some of the other counties that you're talking about, Mr. Daughter.
Anyone else?
Oh, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
There's, we're talking about the financial condition of our county. And we all are interested in making sure that whoever the board picks as a priority can pay it back. But, when you look at it, aren't we just as obligated to help people or municipalities that possibly are in trouble than we are to just look at a municipality that really don't need the money and could pay it back early? My theory is this: some of the municipalities in our county, and by the way, we are not isolated in our county. This is all over the state, and it's all over our country. Municipalities are having problems. And I look at it from the standpoint that if a municipality needs help, then it would be cheaper on the county, much less expensive in the long run, if we were to help a municipality now rather than later, after it's too late. That's my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I believe Commissioner May has a motion on it.
Yeah, I've got a motion on the floor. Yes, sir. And I couldn't repeat it to save my life.
You want to, based on what you said, do you want to withdraw it? Because your motion was directing the finance director to go ahead and apply to the LGC.
Well, I would ask that still be true. Apply to the LGC, but not to hold up our application to the Eastern Region for the funds of $576,923.08.
Motion on the floor. Any more discussion? No more discussion. Everyone in favor show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
Are we too late, Mr.?
Ms. Holt wants to mention that.
Oh, okay.
Actually, applying for this with LGC is a big application, and we will have to hire it would be wise to hire Davenport to go through this with us. That's what we normally do. So we will have some cost in this. I don't have the estimate.
LGC application is $1,200, I think.
And then you're gonna have, I don't know what, I'll have to get in touch with Davenport and see if they can give me an estimate. It's not cheap normally.
I would like to say something if I could, in reference to.
But let me take care of one thing first, though. We don't have anybody in here except us and Mr. Bob Jackson and Steve Hurd, and I don't think either one of them is gonna pull out a gun. Terry, if you want to leave, go ahead and leave.
Sure, I'm good.
No, I think we're good. Do y'all not agree? Yeah, go. Thank you so much, but.
Thanks, Ed.
Mr. King.
Okay, so if we borrow the money, it's got to be paid back in 5 years. We're going to have the full amount. It's going to cost us, how much?
It's gonna cost you the 1%, but plus the cost of the application.
1% of, was that $5,700?
Right.
Okay, $5,700, so 1%. Now, if you now having a cost of what now to apply this?
We'll just say $1,200 to $1,500.
$1,500, so you've got 6, you probably got you probably have $7,500 in this whole thing. And of course, your time too. And,
Well, I
you
mean,
know,
then you're gonna have to, I mean, you don't want to have, you've brought Davenport in, you've brought, the bond attorney in, now you're throwing this into this whole process.
Right.
So you don't want to leave them out when you're fixing to go forward on such big issues as you've got out there. So we're gonna want to let them be in on the process of the application with LGC. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. And then with that, so 7,500, I'm trying to get the money back. We're treating this like a revolving loan fund is what we're doing. It's just a RLF. And if it comes in, we got to set the rate going into these municipalities or whoever borrows the money. We become bank. It's just got to be paid back in 5 years. And we just, as I would suggest, as we move forward, that we incorporate a fee or a rate to offset our cost. And, of course, pay for our overhead as we administer this over the next 5 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll just call Davenport and get an estimate and bring that cost back to you.
Anyone else?
Yes,
Nothing's free.
how long does that usually take, Pam? Is there some kind of
Well,
rule
I
of
mean,
thumb?
normally I'm doing this for a big issue. I've never done it for something like this, but I pretty much have to go through the whole process, which is creating a whole set of financials and going through the application process. And normally we have to have the projects in a certain, we have to have bids and everything. I don't know if that will affect this issue. I just don't, I've never done anything this small, so I'm not really sure if there's different rules for this small of an issue. But if it's like our others, you have to have bids. I would think that you've got to have, something from these municipalities. Because where are we going to get the information to turn in the LGC if we don't get it from them,
Mr. Chairman? I was under the impression that with the LGC, Wayne County is borrowing the money. If a municipality is picked as a priority, it's their responsibility to go to the LGC to get approval from what we are lending to them.
That's correct.
Okay, so we only have to do this for Wayne County. We don't have to worry about the municipalities. If a municipality does not meet our criteria and are not priority, it could go to someone that's not a municipality. So that's why we are setting these priorities, and next meeting is the time that we set priorities on this thing and actually take a vote to see who comes out on top. Well, if somebody falls off, and let's say they don't need their funds, we go to the next priority. So once we get the funds here, and we stay within the guidelines of what is economic development, and of course keeping in mind, and it's already been said from the Eastern Region, that's going to be dissolved June 30th. There's not going to be someone standing over us, watching us every move we make. As long as we stay within the guidelines, of course, and water and sewer and these kind of things, and paving the streets or roads are included in economic development, we will be fine. That's my understanding.
I'm just going to have to talk to LGC, because normally when I go to LGC, you have to have specific projects, specific amounts, and all the data to back it up. It's a notebook full of information I give them before I borrow money. Like I said, I've never borrowed at this level, and I haven't talked to the LGC yet. But, and Morton, can you help? Do you know these answers at all?
No.
So that is the normal process. So I can't really tell you what I'm going to have for the LGC.
We get the application in, the time that it takes for the LGC is really not an issue.
Right. We can do the application, but getting through the next process of the LGC is.
Would you ask them whether or not maybe they can just waive it in regards to the fact that we are in fact borrowing funds basically from the state? Whether or not there would be any possibility of a waiver, and it's only $75,000 over the $500,000 loan.
I've already asked.
You already asked? Okay.
I mean, if you borrow $499,000, we don't have to go to the LGC. So, I mean, going to that next step creates that application.
Keep adding figures of what it's gonna cost to apply, you may have eat up that $75,000.
Well, we,
Mr. King.
We did have an individual, a municipality that came for 75,000 today, so 75,000 could be a
Anyone else?
nice.
I was just gonna get the estimate and get it back to us. Now then we can make an even better
Right.
decision. And if we have to change it, then we'll change it.
Information by Monday when we reconvene. When we reconvene.
If we can get the information, I hope by then.
You have a motion on the floor?
No,
Yeah, it's
we've
been
already
voted on.
Okay.
Anyone else got anything?
Now, I think it's time for us to move on.
Well, we're down to the commissioner's comments, and we're going to have to sit on that a minute because we need to go back in closed session to discuss matters with our attorney.
Consult with an attorney in order to preserve attorney-client privilege.
Do you need a
Need a
motion? Need a motion.
I so move.
I have a motion on the floor. We'll go into closed session. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. We are back in session. We've come out of closed session. Board of Commissioners comments, Mr. Bell.
Motion to recess to Monday of next week.
Mr. Payne.
I've got nothing else to say. I've said all I want to.
Mr. Keene.
Mr. Chairman, as the people of Wayne County saw today, all that tuned in live and what they'll read and in the papers and all the media and all that we've done today, it's just amazing at how engaged we are as commissioners and how the 7 of us can agree to disagree, but we can take care of county governance. And as I mentioned, you know, we've had a lot to discuss today, and we've accomplished a lot. And I just want to commend all the fellow commissioners for staying focused and doing what is best for this county. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
I said my comments earlier, no comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Doherty.
I'm going to keep them brief, but I do urge this board to reflect on what we discussed today regarding these schools and the capital improvements with the schools. And I'm hoping that Monday we can come to an agreement to at least release the school board to tackle those 3 improvements. I hope we'll set up a meeting with the school board so that we can explore fully the cost-saving method of building these 2 schools with a design build at some agreed-to price so that we can do this sooner rather than later. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Camardi.
Mr. Chairman, I close my comments today with what I started with this morning. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. We've done a good job today, but we must always remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Camardi. I'm going to be short and brief. Again, I want to thank, we had a tough week last week in Wayne County. With the weather that we had no control over, losing our beloved sheriff. But I again want to thank every single county employee for what they did last week under the circumstances. I've had numerous employees to thank us for looking after them, not making them drive on the slick roads to come to work. Many emails and thank yous. All the department heads, and we made a decision for everyone to come into work on Friday. 4-day people, 5-day people, flex people. Everyone did not show up for work, but a lot did. And I want to thank the ones that did, and I hope the ones that didn't had a good reason. I have not had a single employee that I've talked to complain about coming into work Friday. All of them was very thankful for what we did for them last week. And to all the county employees, again, thank you. And that's my comments.
Motion still stand.
I have a motion on the floor that we recess until Monday,
10 o'clock.
the 10th, at 10 o'clock.
Mr. Chairman, is that time for your dental appointment?
My dental appointment is at 8 o'clock.
Okay, just make sure.
If I didn't have a dental appointment at 8 o'clock, we would be here at 8 o'clock. The rest of the commissioners has consented to wait a little while, so we're going to start at 10 o'clock.
I was just asked to remind you about that.
Okay, all right.
Is that part of the motion?
I have a motion on the floor that we recess. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you.